Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. Learning Ally, a nonprofit education organization, helps to transform the lives of struggling learners by delivering proven solutions that help students reach their potential. We have a heritage of supporting students with a reading deficit like dyslexia. Our award-winning human-read audiobook solution helps students in grades 3 through 12 access books they want and need to read to help them succeed. Visit www.learningally.org for more information.
The following content is not intended as a substitute for professional legal advice, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your attorney, advocate, physician, or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding any medical or educational concerns.
Hello and welcome to Empowered Dyslexia. I'm your host, Stephen Yearout, and we are here to help you be a better informed partner in education. On this show, we discuss dyslexia and other related disorders. We discuss special education policy at the local, state, and federal level. We talk about research and what is the most up-to-date research, what is the most scientifically proven, validated research, and we speak to experts in their field. The part that I love the most is, we talk to each of you that's listening. We talk to our audience. We talk to those with personal stories around learning disabilities and how they ended up getting either the support they needed or the struggling. How did they become a better self-advocate? We always ask that that you like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us a comment. We love to hear from our audience. We love to hear how we're doing. If there's any topics out there that you would love to hear more about. On all of our social media platforms as well as audio platforms, we're on every possible audio app where you get your podcast from. Obviously, if you like to watch our broadcast, it's either YouTube Live or Facebook Live. So today we have a returning guest. We had a lot of requests for a deeper dive into assistive technology, the technology that's been put into Microsoft's products. So my good friend Rachel Berger from Microsoft has come back on, and we're going to do a deep dive into what technologies, what assistive technologies has Microsoft put into their products to help those of us who have learning disabilities, and or even those that would like to take advantage of those type of tools. So just a real quick recap of Rachel's background. She's an executive director of Decoding Dyslexia, Minnesota. She's an advocate for students with learning disabilities. For the past 7 years, she's worked with legislators on improving policies to benefit students with dyslexia and their educational needs. She serves on the Higher Education Literacy Partnership in Minnesota. She worked for Microsoft Education as the Dyslexia Initiative Assistant Technology Specialist. She helps train the educators and students in using this assistive technology to remove the barriers and empower the students to reach their full potential in education. And she's so gracious with her time, and she's always out there trying to do and make sure that we as the dyslexic population get what we need to be successful. So Rachel, thank you so much for taking the time to come back and join us.
Thanks, Stephen. Great to be back with you, and appreciate the ability to continue sharing more about tools and supports that can help really learners of all abilities, but in particular to help level the playing field with our students who are dyslexic.
Absolutely. So I gave a little bit of an intro, but can you tell our guests a little bit more about who Rachel is and why she's doing the things that she's doing?
Sure, Stephen. Yes, I am all of those things that you said. You did so well. I am the director of Decoding Dyslexia Minnesota. We've been since 2013 working with policymakers and educators and parents. And I am also an assistive tech specialist at Microsoft Education in the field of dyslexia and learning disabilities. And importantly, I'm also a mother of 3 sons, 2 of which have their share of learning differences. And I too, through learning about one of my sons, discovered the reasons that I struggled with my own pursuit of education. And so really my involvement in this community was driven by necessity. When we discovered my now 14-year-old son was dyslexic at age 5, and our schools were not prepared to teach him, not very supportive of the word dyslexia, that was a critical turning point for me, where I felt there was a need to do more. And so really that's kind of who I am, and what was my driving passion in being involved in this field.
Yeah, you hear the story time and time again. Those of us that struggled growing up with, just, being put in an environment that sometimes can be, traumatic, being school, education, and, living through it, some of us not knowing that we have this learning disability, and or some of us knowing that we have it and not getting any assistance, any help. Now that we're adults, we're gonna get out there and fight for all kids, and we're gonna make sure that they don't have to go through the problems or the struggles that we went through. So thank you for all that you do.
And that's just it, Stephen. I know you and I share that learning difference as well, but that's just what it's all about. In learning about my son, we were able to kind of turn the hands back in our own family and understand, the learning differences that were there, that at the time, everyone thought was behavioral issues. And as you and I know and have experienced, behavior is the symptom rather than the cause. And oftentimes behavior is, hand in hand with a learning disability, because students, when they're being asked to sit for 6 hours a day and do something that they are struggling with, or need presented in a different manner, sometimes behavior results.
Yeah, I say that all the time. The behavior is a symptom of a bigger problem. And if we don't dig into what the behaviors really are, and the behaviors are the children talking to us. The children are actually telling us exactly what's going on, and it's up to us as adults to really hear them. We say the saying, meet them where they're at, all the time, and for far too long we have completely missed the boat on that. So we've had the more technology that we get in the classroom, obviously, we can take advantage of that. However, when you and I were talking earlier today, you made a great point that if we don't teach these kids how to use this technology and have that assistive piece of it added into it, our population, the population with learning disabilities, whether it's dyslexia or some other learning disability, we're going to end up further and further behind. So
That's just it. That's just it, Stephen. Our students who are dyslexic, whether they're identified and supported or not, are already at a disadvantage when it comes to education. And then as we move to middle school, high school, and beyond, technology is a big part of our learning environment. And so again, our students with dyslexia, if they're not supported with assistive technology that can help remove that barrier, level the playing field, they only continue to struggle deeper, and that gap grows wider. And really, students with learning disabilities as a whole are at such risk when it comes to going to and completing college. Students with disabilities are most likely to drop out of college, and about 60% of students with disabilities do not leave before they receive their four-year degree. And so the more that we can do, because technology is increasingly a part of our everyday lives, the more we can do to help students understand how to utilize it, to have our educators included in the classroom in a non-stigmatizing way, then we are really helping prepare our students who learn differently, our non-neurotypical learners, to be more supported and be ready for college and future employment.
Yeah, there was an article that was just done by the study was funded and done by the Barbara Bush Foundation, that talks about the ultimate cost of illiteracy on the United States. And I want to say the figure was $2.2 trillion a year on illiteracy. And they were saying that 130 million adults don't read at a sixth grade level. I want that to sink in for a second for our listeners and our viewers. 130 million adults in the United States don't read at a sixth grade level. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Well, the recent NAESP scores in our nation showed that our nation's fourth graders, only 60% are reading at grade level. So the stats that you just you just quoted, it's disheartening, but given the recent NAESP scores, I'm not surprised. However, think about the ability to, again, attend college and be gainfully employed when your reading proficiency rate is low.
Yeah, I mean, there was no way. I mean, I went to community college. I enrolled in community college a couple of times after I got my, as I like to call it, my good enough diploma, my GED. And I would stay enrolled right up to that last day that you could drop the class and still get, 100% refund, just because I knew
I did that too.
Yeah, I knew that there was no way that I was going to be able to do the level of work that needed to be, or that was required of me. So that wasn't going to happen. So you talk about going on to college. I mean, we're lucky to make it through high school, much less go on to college.
Right.
So,
I mean, the statistics among those with low literacy are absolutely staggering. The common denominator of 44% of females and 57% of males who drop out of school, the 70% of individuals incarcerated, 80% of youth involved in juvenile justice, and the 45% of individuals who live in poverty is low literacy, or what's called functional illiteracy. We know that there is no other reading disability, and that dyslexia impacts 17 to 20% of our population, whether it's identified or supported or not. It's incredible, but with all this knowledge, we need to ensure that action is taken. And I know this is something that you and I have talked about. you're deeply passionate as well, but we have to ensure that the right tools get into the hands of our educators, into the hands of our students, and even the parents who support those students, so that we can ensure individuals who learn differently have their needs met.
Well, that's a great segue into our topic today, which is assistive technology, doing a deeper dive into what Microsoft has implemented or has designed into their products. So can you give us kind of a really high overview of why Microsoft has taken this stance and implemented these assistive technologies into their operating systems, the operating system itself, as well as Office. And then I'll let you take it away, and you jump right into your presentation.
Sure. Well, with their newish CEO, I mean, Satya has been around for about 5 years now, but he's a driving part of their new mission, which is to empower every single person on the planet to achieve more. And really, if you think about that, Stephen, they're not saying 75% of the population or the neurotypical percentage of the population. They're saying every single person on the planet. And again, thinking about that, accessibility globally is something that about 1 billion people require on a daily basis. I mean, assistive technology is something that many, many, many individuals use. And this is something that Microsoft is building into core products and across platforms, and they want to ensure that everyone has access. So,
I mean, and just for our viewers, when we say it's assistive technology, I'll read a real quick definition. Assistive technology is any item, piece of equipment, software program, product system that, when used, is to increase, maintain, or improve the functionality of that person's capabilities. So assistive technology can be low tech or very high tech. So anything from felt blocks, communication boards, all the way to special purpose computers, hardware, software. It can be inclusive, or it can be specialized learning materials for that person. Anything from prosthetics to positioning devices. It is the assistive technology umbrella is very, very wide. I mean, everything from electronic devices, wheelchairs, walkers, braces, you name it. Those are all assistive technologies that help us as individuals with disabilities, be able to level the playing field and allow us to access life just like everybody else, whether it's education or, everyday normal life.
right. Yes, it's a pretty big umbrella. This areas Microsoft is concerned with are involving technology and ensuring that that technology is accessible to everyone. One of the things that you and I have probably both experienced is that assistive technology previously has been something where it's I call it a members only club for those that can afford to pay for it. And Microsoft is turning that around and ensuring that assistive technology and accessibility are not members only clubs. These are things that are afforded to everyone. And that's why I, in particular, am very fond of the tools that I'm going to show you today. It's because anyone can use them from any device.
Great.
You do not necessarily need to have a Microsoft computer.
Sounds good. So let's see it. Let's do it.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started, and we'll see what we can cover in today's deep dive.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
1 second as I get queued up here, Stephen. So we're going to start out today in PowerPoint. Stephen had already introduced me, But for those of you that like to tweet, my Twitter handle is at Rachel M. Berger. You can find me there and connect with me. And we did cover Microsoft's mission, which is to empower every person on the planet to achieve more. I'm going to turn off my camera so that we can fully focus on our presentation. And then we'll go ahead and start with a slide that has a lot of meaning to me. And the reason this has meaning, I'm sure, Stephen, you'll be able to relate to this as well.
There you go.
But in particular, this has meaning to me because I spent a lot of my education years like the little guy who's unable to see over the fence to fully participate in watching a baseball game. I spent many of my education years unknowingly with a learning disability that was not supported. And so I know a lot of our educators will have seen this visual image on equality versus equity, but the point I'd like to make is that there's a misconception that equity and equality mean the same thing and that they can be used interchangeably, especially when talking about education, but they don't mean the same thing. And even though the two words are similar, the difference between them is crucial, especially when talking about students that learn differently. So I'm going to show you how, with the learning tools Microsoft has created, we can provide students with equitable access to their curriculum, which is very important to them being a part of that learning community. And it's important to them personalizing their learning experience, gaining in their independence so that they can reach their full educational potential. And I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of backdrop so that you have an understanding why these tools are so important to Microsoft. So in 2014, Scholastic put out a survey, and during that time, about 14,000 educators responded. And we learned that classes today are vastly different than, say, when you and I were sitting in those seats. 3/4 of all educators reported working in classrooms where reading levels span 4 or more grade levels. Now, that's not surprising given some of the statistics we were talking about before we went into the presentation. But as you can imagine, it's very difficult for educators when reading levels are varying to that degree within one gen ed setting. 3/4 of all our educators report having students with special education needs in their classroom, and that can be an individual with an IEP or a 504, or an individual with some unique level of need that requires accommodation and modification. And then up to half of all of our classrooms, we have students who are non-native speakers. So you can see, just given those 3 data points, up to 50% of instructional time can be lost managing those needs, including assistive technology. And yet assistive technology is there for us to be the game changer. It's meant to level the playing field and bridge those gaps. And so when thinking about inclusive technology, Microsoft keeps these 3 categories in mind. First is students of all abilities and wanting to ensure they're able to do their best work and personalize that experience in a way that works best for them. The next is our educators and wanting to enable them to engage every learner by providing accessible tools for the classroom. And then lastly, on a school level, equity and inclusion are top of mind for everyone, from our administrators to educators, paraprofessionals, students, and parents, and just wanting to, again, meet the needs of all students so that they can reach their full educational potential. So we talked a little bit when Stephen and I were discussing assistive technology and the needs, and so we'll just kind of move over this one quickly. But from a global standpoint, about 1 billion people require some level of assistive technology on a daily basis. And as this slide shows, that's for a multitude of reasons. And so right before we go ahead and go into our apps and demonstrate some of these tools, I'd like to also share with you the global hackathon that made these tools possible. So every year, Microsoft holds a hackathon in the summer, and this is something where anyone in the company can work with anyone they like on any technology they like for 1 week out of every year. And as you can imagine, there's some pretty neat things that come when experts in technology are allowed to play for a week. So In 2015, reading, font, accessibility, and education experts got together to look at the latest science, research, and technology techniques, specifically on dyslexia. And again, as we were talking about before we started our presentation, the reason for the interest in dyslexia is that whether it's diagnosed or not, it impacts 17 to 20% of our population's ability to read printed word, which when you're not able to do that proficiently has dire odds stacked against you. And so these individuals built a add-on into OneNote. They won the hackathon that year. And then they went on to work with educators and students focused on dyslexia. Well, what they found was not only did these tools help students who are dyslexic, but also students who were experiencing ADHD, dysgraphia, non-native speakers, and even emerging readers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to leave our PowerPoint, and I'm going to go ahead and go down to OneNote. And Stephen, I'm going to rely upon you to let me know if this is displaying adequately here. We should be looking at my OneNote notebook. Got a purple ribbon across the top.
We're good.
All right, and we've got a sample document up here. I work with a lot of different students, including my own, to help them utilize assistive technology in their day. And so one of the educators and students I'm working with, he's in 3rd grade, is diagnosed as dyslexic. And as you can imagine, there's a bit of gap between him and his peers. And so what they're doing is utilizing the Immersive Reader technology to ensure that he's able to read all that grade level content with his peers. And so how you get information, this is one of the questions that I'm typically asked, well, how do you get things into OneNote? And so you're going to use the Insert tab up at the top. And then when you click on File, what that does is it pulls documents, it opens up your documents on your device. And so from there, you would look for adding a PDF or a Word document. And down here is where you know, at the bottom, and you have these add section and add page. So here it's my 3rd grade reading, and we're on a story called The Closet Creature. So once we have our information in, we can go to the View tab and then click on Immersive Reader. Now we'll give that a minute there. And so now what you'll see is we've got a skin that pops over top of the page here and enables us with that text-to-speech technology with a click of a button. And I'm just going to demonstrate that here for you. So here we can go down and push play. So you should be hearing our lovely neural text-to-speech voice here. And we also have the ability to control our voice speed and our voice selection. Those things are just the first of many things that enable a user to personalize their consumption of content. And I just want to call out how important that is. So for our learners who process information at a different level of speed, it is really important when you're auditorily consuming content to be able to control that speed so that you can comprehend the text that's being read to you. And so that's just one of them. Let's go over here to the right, and under these icons are where we have the ability to, again, continue personalizing this content so that we can read with pleasure to whatever degree we like. So we can start out with the text sizing. And right here, that enables us to be able to easily see the text on the page. Next is spacing, and this is something one of my sons says, again, his words, not mine. But when I use the spacing, it opens things up and allows me to be able to slow my brain down so that I remember what I read when I get to the end of the page. That's what one of my sons said. Otherwise, when he doesn't have spacing and everything is really small and tightly close together, he plows through the content and then doesn't remember what he read by the end of the page. Down here, we've got our font choices, Comic Sans being one that has been requested by educators because it looks more handwritten and some of the letters are easier to distinguish for our struggling readers. And we also have background colors. Now, this could be something that's simply a preference of a student. It could be that you have eye strain or low vision, or even maybe one of the small percentage of individuals who struggles with something called convergence insufficiency. No matter what the need is, or even the desire, what I love about these tools is that you don't have to prove that need with an IEP or a 504 to get this accessibility. It's simply there and afforded to everyone. Next, we're going to go under our grammar options, and here we can break our words into syllables, all the while it's highlighting our text and reading it aloud. We also have highlighting of parts of speech. So we can do nouns, verbs, adjectives, and adverbs. We can even show the labels above. And we also, again, because we have the choice of a background color, we can choose the color that we're highlighting in, so that it doesn't conflict with that background color, or maybe an educator wants to have words highlighted in a specific color. Whatever the reason, again, those choices are there and given to everyone. So next we've got our reading preferences, and this is where some of my favorite features are housed. We're going to start out with something called line focus mode, and some of you might remember back in the day when you learned to read using these things called reading rulers, and they would block out a certain amount of text at one time so that you were focusing on specific parts of that page. So here we can do that automatically by choosing 1, 3, or 5 lines, or again, your full page. And all the while, it will scroll that text automatically for you. So when you're in line focus mode, you don't have to do anything except push the play button, and your text is going to scroll. Next, we have Picture Dictionary, and this is probably my favorite feature. So when we have Picture Dictionary turned on, we can click on a word, and we get a photograph that pops up to help us create meaning and comprehend that word. And when you click on a word that has multiple meanings, you'll have several pictures to choose from, or to look at to help you create meaning. You also have a speaker right here.
Covers.
You can hear the words spoken aloud. And what I really like is that Picture Dictionary, our partner Boardmaker, who makes the visual images for Picture Dictionary, keeps adding more and more pictures. So you'll find new images popping up as you utilize these tools. Next, we have Translator, and you'll see this little arrow here. I can toggle there. I've got a choice of anywhere up to 65 different languages to choose from. And I could choose to change just a word. So let's look at this, just one word here. And there we go. We've got the word voice in Spanish, or I could choose to change my entire document to Spanish. And again, we'd have that read aloud. So let's take a listen to what that sounds like.
The closet creature de que ya soy. Golpe. Golpe.
Sorry about that. Here we go.
Golpe. Rasguño.
Okay, so now you hear our lovely neural text-to-speech voice, and what I can also do is toggle between the original and the Spanish version at the top of the page. Picture Dictionary also follows us here. And there's that speaker again, so we can have the words spoken aloud. So this is in a nutshell.
Immersive Reader looks like when we are using it in OneNote. And OneNote is both a desktop version and an online version. So you can use the online version if you're using OneNote from a Mac, an iPad, or even a Chromebook. And the desktop version can be utilized if you're using a Windows device. So I'm going to show you a couple other places where you're going to find Immersive Reader, and then we'll dip back into our PowerPoint. So down here, if you can see my toolbar, I've got Google, but I've also got over here Edge Browser. And this is the Chromium version of Edge Browser. This is Microsoft's internet search engine. And so we're going to go ahead and take a look at Edge Browser and see why you might want to make it your premium search engine when you are when you're working with students. So here I have a page up called Tween Tribune. This is one of my favorite K-12 content pages. It's got a multitude of content educationally for students, so on all sorts of different topics. They also Lexile level this content for readers, but even better than that, when you're using Edge Browser, if you go up to the top of the bar here, you'll see Immersive Reader. And so once I click on that, I now have all of the ads wipe out of the page, and I've got what's called a reading view. And so I could go ahead to my toolbar here and click on Read Aloud and have my text read aloud.
Tootsie Rolls were World War II energy bars. On February 23rd.
Okay, now take a look at that text. It is pretty closely kerned together and it's pretty tiny. So again, over here, I've got voice options and our speed settings, but if I want to adjust my text, I'm going to go over here to text preferences, and let's go ahead and move that up a couple of notches. Look at this, I can increase my text spacing. I can choose a background color that works best for me. And over here, again, we've got our grammar tools. So syllables, highlighting of parts of speech, and our reading preferences as well. So we could choose a line focus mode, picture dictionary, and we can even translate this page. Let's take a look at picture dictionary. So here we are in a mainstream internet search. We've got an article pulled up, and we're utilizing Immersive Reader technology built into Edge Browser to be able to completely personalize how we're consuming this content. I think this is pretty amazing. And we've even got picture dictionary and translator built in as well. So just like I had showed you in OneNote, again, all of these features available to you in Edge Browser Chromium version. There's one more place I want to show you that you'll be able to utilize Immersive Reader before we dip back into our PowerPoint for a few minutes. And so this is, I'm just going to toggle over here on my tabs. I'm still in the internet. I'm still in Edge Browser, but I'm using Word Online. And so in Word Online, we can again go to the View tab just like we did in OneNote. And when we click on the View tab, there we find our Immersive Reader icon. Once I click on that, again, just like when we were in OneNote, it's going to pop a skin over top of the page. And we now have all of these tools to personalize how we want to consume this content. And you might notice that it looks just like when we were in OneNote with the blue background. I've got text sizing and spacing on, and that's because these two sync up with one another, but also because they have memory. And so you don't have to reset these each time you open a page to read. So everything familiar here as when we were in OneNote and in Edge Browser. So I'm going to pop back out of that, and let's go ahead back into our PowerPoint.
So while you're going back into your
absolutely.
PowerPoint, I just want to tell our listeners and viewers that, you know, you may be sitting there thinking that, well, we don't have, you know, Microsoft available in our school. This is one of the things that you can ask for as an accommodation. So you can do it with your IEP, you can do it in your 504 program. You can tell them that this is one of the the accommodations that my child needs, and they'll be able to provide that for you.
Good point, Stephen. Thank you for adding that. Absolutely. However, I'll also say that you can also access these things on other devices. And so if your school has a Chromebook, you would just ask them to ask or to get Office 365 and these accounts, or if they're your students using an iPad, again, that's how you'll utilize it. Your IT person will know exactly what to do.
Great.
And so here's one more thing I want to show you with Immersive Reader. And this is an app in the App Store called Office Lens. It's free, and it can be used with an iPad, an iPhone, and an Android device. And so when they think about our students who are middle school, high school, and beyond, pretty much always have a device on their person. And so for them to be able to utilize Office Lens and Immersive Reader, it really is a game changer. Oftentimes students have different personal devices and then they're using them with headphones, and this is a really non-stigmatizing way to have that text-to-speech technology. So let's go ahead and take a look at what Office Lens does with this little video.
Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout. Would not take the garbage out.
Okay, so you can see that Office Lens used the device's camera to snap a photo of text that the individual wanted read aloud. They then used Immersive Reader, and as you're seeing here, they have all of the same tools in Immersive Reader that we were looking at previously. So your background colors, your picture dictionary, your line focus mode, adjusting text, etc. So all of those tools and features are available to you additionally in Office Lens, which again is free in the App Store. I would highly encourage you, if there's one takeaway, it is to check out Immersive Reader technology and maybe start out by using Office Lens, because that's something as parents you can do at home with your child, and it's really kind of fun. So here's one more thing I want to show you with Office Lens on this next slide here. And this is something that I discovered last spring when we were in the midst of all of our distance learning. My son, who is still in elementary school, was being sent home packets from school. And as a child who's dysgraphic and dyslexic, filling in these kinds of multi-page worksheet packets that weren't created with his needs in mind can be very difficult. Typically, a worksheet packet like this would take him an hour to complete. And so this is very difficult, not only for him, but for myself. And then what his educator gets back and receives is it's very hard to read, and it's also not really indicative of his subject matter mastery, because when you're dysgraphic and you're trying to write, really the manual task of writing is so difficult that oftentimes you leave a lot of things out and you don't create full sentences. So here I'm going to show you what we did with Office Lens that, again, removed that barrier. And enabled him and empowered him to be able to take what he was, experiencing as a weakness and, get around it. So let's take a look at this. So what's happening is we're using Immersive Reader, Office Lens, to snap a photograph of those worksheets. And then up in the corner, we had a large T for text box that we were using. So you grab a text box and then you use the device's dictation feature and you start speaking into the text box. And you'll see here now, instead of handwriting those answers, my son was able to simply just dictate those answers. When you're done with it, you can move that text box to the appropriate place. And then if you use the pincher motion of your fingers, you can shrink or enlarge in that text box to ensure that it fits in the right place. So again, another piece for you guys to try out at home.
Awesome.
I'm showing here how we also then went and sent that photograph essentially to his educator through Outlook. So again, I like to say that we saved a couple lives here with this piece of technology and this workaround. The first was mine and trying to, you know, it shortened up the amount of time that my son needed help from me. And the next was his. We definitely reduced his frustration. And then his educator actually received the assignment and was able to really see that he was knowledgeable about that subject. And so this is a really great tool. Again, I would have you try out. Okay,
I want to jump in. I want to jump in here real quick, and
yes.
You know, there's also a line of thought that, you know, this is going to that people are going to use this as and I've heard this time and time again, and I can't stand the word when they use it this way. They're going to use it as a crutch, and it's not a crutch.
Right.
This is to be used in conjunction with, not a taking place of the remediation that the child should be receiving at school too.
Right.
This is allowing that child to continue to do grade level work or work at their cognitive abilities, and like you were saying, show their mastery of that subject in a way that they're participating right now, because their remediation isn't a one-day remediation, or it definitely shouldn't be. So we need to make sure that, go ahead.
Thanks for pointing that out, Stephen. With any of the tools that I'm showing you, it's really important to understand that these are not meant to take place of instruction or those needed interventions. These are meant to bridge the gap when students are in those learning moments and needing to work with their peers or have that accessibility to curriculum. And that's a really important piece for our students with learning disabilities, is to have access to their grade level content, same as their peers. Otherwise, if they don't, we're kind of increasing those gaps between them and their peers. And so this is meant to be integrated. There's, as Stephen said, a time and a place for them to have those interventions and instructions and work on things like handwriting and increasing their grade level reading proficiency. And these are just meant to be integrated as a support tool.
Yeah, that remediation doesn't stop. What I mean is their work that they're being required to do in the classroom doesn't stop just because they're doing remediation. So we have to be able to, like you were saying, bridge that gap, so they can continue to do the work that they are capable of doing.
Well, and that's, you know, not to continue on there, but that is what helps students to, you know, again, it's really important for them to be able to personalize that learning experience, but also to gain in their independence. And so when we're showing them how to utilize technology tools, this is a support that helps them gain in their independence while they're still, you know, receiving those supports and services. So continuing on with places you may find Immersive Reader, I have a slide up here on Microsoft Forms. Any educators who are familiar with and utilize Microsoft Forms, you can build your quizzes and tests into Forms, and then you have the ability to enable students who struggle with reading and would normally need a test or quiz read aloud to them. They can simply click on Immersive Reader, as it's showing in the slide, and have that read aloud to them. So now they're able to be a little bit more independent with that test taking, and definitely helps them with their confidence and their independence. We also have, for those of you that use Canvas in your school and with your learning systems, Canvas has embedded Immersive Reader. And so here's a slide showing, again, Immersive Reader and all of the features that you're becoming familiar with now. Right there up at the top is an Immersive Reader button, and you can utilize that in Canvas. A lot of EdTech apps and publishers are embedding Immersive Reader, so there is a chance that you might be using something with your students that already has it, and I encourage you to check it out. These are just a few currently, and if you are working with EdTech apps or publishers and want to see Immersive Reader embedded, please let them know about us. This here is a link to all about Immersive Reader. This is a page that was built to give you everything you need on Immersive Reader, how-to videos, the latest research, all of that is housed on this All About Immersive Reader page.
And I'll put
next,
I'll put that.
Go ahead.
I'll put that in the description of the video and in our chat link here too.
Great, thank you. And it is October, which is Dyslexia Awareness Month. So I want to make sure that all of you know that we have dyslexia awareness curriculum made in partnership with our global partner, Made by Dyslexia. And this is dyslexia awareness curriculum created for educators, parents, or anyone who's interested. You can take this for free in the Microsoft Educator Center. And these are some really wonderful videos on how you can be aware of dyslexia, how you can be inclusive of it in your classroom, and how you can support students with dyslexia. So again, free and available to you to take from the comfort of your own home. And I'll make sure you get these links to include as well, Stephen. And then we are coming closely to the end of what we have today. How many minutes do we have left, Stephen?
We've got about 10 minutes left.
Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and we're going to end today's session with writing. And before I go into that, I just want to share with you this image, which is what we call our Microsoft Learning Tools availability periodic chart, if you will. So on the left here, it tells you which features, and then you can see across which platforms you'll have those features.
Can we get a copy of that image also, so we can share that with our listeners and viewers?
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. And then let's go ahead and talk about writing. And so if you have a student who's dyslexic, they almost always also struggle with writing and might be dysgraphic as well. And so this is an image from the Knoll Hill School. The headmaster there, Jan, says, our pupils pretty much without exception hate writing, and the learning tools transformed writing for our pupils. I'm going to show you next an example from one of my sons, and I would say that you know, similar to what Jan said, this is the way my son feels about writing and experiences it. And that is because he's dyslexic, dysgraphic, and has dyscalculia as well. So on the left, we have an example of a one-page story he was asked to write for his language arts. And you can tell the manual task of writing is very difficult. And in addition to that, the longer he spends at the task doesn't necessarily result in a better outcome. So the manual task, including, you know, punctuation and spelling, his ability to sequence and include richness of content, all of those things go out the window for him. And yet, as his educator says, you know, yet when I sit down and talk to him, he will paint me a beautiful story with his words. Well, this is very commonly experienced for individuals with dyslexia. And as an individual, I can look at this and say, I completely relate. My struggle was exactly the same. And so what I did for my son was enable him with the tools built into Word. And then we have this example on the right, which took only 12 minutes from start to finish, including editing. And that's a big difference between the left, which was 50 minutes, 50.
Well, and here's the other piece of this that, you know, this picture does not show, is the level of frustration that your son had and went through in writing what you see there, and the fact that regardless of you knowing this child has dysgraphia or dyslexia or anything else, learning disability, if that on the left is turned in, most teachers,
Mhm.
at no fault to their own, most teachers are going to look at that and go, you didn't even try. You didn't put any effort into this whatsoever. And you have no idea the amount of effort that work right there, the amount of effort that was put into producing what you would look at and go, this is not, what we're asking for. This is not,
Right.
grade level material. This is not da. However, on the right, that's what it should look like. That's what he was trying to say.
Exactly. And so this is a really clear example for those of us that share dyslexia, for us to see how, being offered a tool really isn't a crutch. It isn't a cheat. It is opening the door for him to be able to access that grade level content, same as his peers. He's just using a different modality. He's speaking it now versus manually writing it. Do I agree that he needs to be able to write, that it's a benefit to him? Absolutely. However, he needs to be able to complete his assignment and feel like, just like his peers, I understand what my teacher's asking me to do. I can complete that and build confidence in that manner versus being stuck back here. This is called what I call being left out and being left without. And what I love about Microsoft tools is that we are not leaving people out.
Right. I mean, the other piece of this is a glowing representation of a lot of times when the programs that are out there tend to only remediate a portion of the issues that are faced, from somebody who's dyslexic. Right. They don't do the spelling. They don't do the comprehension. They don't do the mental imagery. All of the, you talked about your son who could paint you a beautiful picture if he spoke it.
Right.
But
exactly.
If he's struggling with the writing, if he's struggling with the spelling, he's never going to be able to put out the level of the painting. He's never going to be able to paint that picture the way that he can when he speaks it, because the remediation was left out there too. So that's something that we, as the advocates, as the parents, need to make sure that we're asking those questions. So sorry, go ahead.
No, absolutely. It's a good point, Stephen. I'm glad you're including that as well. Well, let's go ahead and show you guys how it was possible to go from something that was illegible and took him 50 minutes to complete to something that was really well written and enabled him to be for the first time ever, one of the featured students by his educator for his quality work. And so there's a couple of things. We are now in Word Desktop. You can use both the desktop version and the free online version. So these tools are in both, and I'm under the Home tab all the way over to the right here. Let's start out with the first tool that he utilized that enabled him to be able to more effectively create content. And so I want to call attention to this tiny little arrow down here. Before you get started dictating, make sure that you're using the correct voice. So if you prefer to use your native language and it's Spanish, go ahead and click on Spanish. Or if you're speaking in Chinese, utilize that. In this case, I unfortunately only speak one language, and that is English. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm set to English, and then we'll go ahead and start dictating. I'm a user of dictation software. I used to jokingly call myself a software donor because I hadn't actually experienced a tool that would effectively remove the barriers I was experiencing, period. Okay, so here's the sentence or thought that I dictated. This is actually all true. I too am a user of dictation. And so here we've got a couple of errors that my editor is already underlining for me, but you see how quickly and easily I was able to dictate. And I'm just going to add one more thing here because I am a user. of dictation software, I'll say that honestly have never experienced anything like the dictation that's built into Word, other than using my iPhone, which people would get really annoyed at because I'd be dictating emails at work using my iPhone. So this software is absolutely amazing. And I know previously, before I started this with my son, he was really nervous about trying it because he had tried it on the computer issued by his school, which was not a Microsoft computer and wasn't this type of dictation software. And he was actually experiencing more roadblocks. So you really want to check to make sure the software that you're using works effectively for that individual. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, oftentimes we ask students when they're writing anything, whether it be writing handwritten or writing via dictation, we say, can you read that back aloud and make sure that makes sense to you? So under our review tab, we also have the read aloud feature. And this is just that, it's just read aloud. So it's simply gonna read it back. This is not Immersive Reader right here. So let's take a listen.
I'm a user of dictation software. I used to jokingly call myself a software.
Okay, so that's reading it back to me. I'm able to understand what I've written, and it was toggling between dictation under the home tab and under our review tab, read aloud. That enabled my son to be able to quickly and efficiently create that content. In addition to that, you'll see we're still under the review tab, and we've got editor. Editor is a game changer. So let's click on editor. And now we have this pane that's opened up on our right-hand side of the screen, and it's going to enable us to walk through all of the different errors that are flagged and independently, this is really important, independently be able to correct our document before we turn it in. So let's start out with our spelling, and it picked up because in the wrong, incorrectly, but yet it's offering me the ability to correct it here. And the next, what I like here is we've got the word principal, it's misspelled. Now, previously, if you're using a spell checker in Word, it would give you this drop-down list, and you would have, 3 possibilities, but there's no sort of context helping you to disambiguate between which version of the word did you mean. And that can be really difficult if you're dyslexic. It's like, okay, great, I know there's 3 different spellings of principal, but I don't know which one I meant. And so you got to get out your dictionary and look it up. Well, here we've improved that spell checker, and now you've got context underneath here so that you can more effectively be able to determine which version of the word you meant. And if you're fatiguing, you can click on the read aloud and have that read aloud.
Principal, similar to main, leader, superintendent.
Okay. And then we go ahead and click on the word that we'd like to have corrected there, and our document will continue to walk us through automatically the next errors it's picking up until we get to the end. One more thing, I know we're getting really close on our time here. I want to show you that is built in here. Actually, 2 more, I lied. Let's make sure you guys know that under the View tab again, you have the ability to use Immersive Reader. However, more often than not, when we are creating content and we're writing, we're not looking for that Immersive Reader experience because we're writing. So the last thing I want to show you here under the Review tab is Translate. And I just want to make sure that you know that this exists because, again, we have students who are non-native speakers, and even that communication between our non-native students and parent-teacher is really important to ensure that everyone has a voice at the table, and that everyone's able to have accessibility to content. And so with the Translate button, again, similarly to OneNote, you could click on translating a section or a document, and then you get your drop-down list over here of possible languages. And it's being a little slow, but that's how our translator works. And I know that it's time for us to wrap up today, and so we've done a deep dive. Here you go, drop-down list, multiple languages, and then you click on Translate. So this is all I've got for you under writing today. We've covered both reading and writing and done a deep dive. I hope this has given you guys some tips and tricks, especially whether we're learning remotely or in the class. These are tools that'll be able to support your students deeply. And so I want to turn things back over to Stephen and allow him to wrap us up today. And I will join you at another time I'll join you again at another time, and we'll cover communication and math tools. Back to you, Stephen.
Thank you very much. That was a lot to take in. The great thing is this show has been recorded. You can come back and rewatch. If the audience wants some more deep dive or more training or whatever, please reach out. I'll see what I can do to set those up. And Rachel, thank you again for all that you do. Your tireless advocating for our children with dyslexia. I mean, I'm so honored to know you and that you're out there, fighting for our children just as hard as we are. So thank you very much.
You as well, Stephen, for all of your work.
So at the end
Takes
of
the team.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the village analogy at its greatest. So at the end of every show, we want to make sure that we say, please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, write us a comment. Please let us know how we're doing. We want to understand what other issues that are out there that you want us to talk about, have the experts on. As you can see by this video here, we're on every audio platform that there is. Go out there, type in Empower Dyslexia, download your favorite podcast from us. We're there for you. Thank you so much for tuning in each and every week. The last thing, we always like to recommend that if your child's struggling in school and you suspect that there is a learning disability, please don't wait. Get your child tested. The process, especially here in the United States, is a very simple process. You need to turn in a request for testing under special education to your school counselor. This gets the process started. We have one of those template letters on our website, www.empowerdyslexia.info, where you can download, again, put all your information in, turn it in to your school counselor. This gets it started. Thank you again for tuning in each and every week. This is an honor for me to do this show. This show is about all of us. This is our show. I mean, this isn't my show or anybody else's. This is our show. This is our community. So thank you for the support. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, we'll see you then. And here's a word from our sponsors.
Learning Ally is a proud sponsor of the Empowered Dyslexia podcast. At Learning Ally, we are always looking for new ways to engage readers struggling with a reading deficit like dyslexia and help them work to their potential. Visit www.learningally.org to learn about the Learning Ally audiobook solution, including which of your students are eligible for access. If you live in Texas, we have great news. The Texas Education Agency provides access to the Learning Ally audiobook solution for all K-12 public and charter school students with reading deficits. Get started today by visiting www.learningally.org/Texas.